Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's Your Mess? Mental, Emotional, Social Status of Life. And I am your host, Tracy D. Armstrong, back again with another great episode. We have another special guest with us today. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is Brother Henry. You have to-
And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am one of the co-founders of Kiekerfer's Entrepreneurial Academy. We are a one of one in the country. The premise behind Kiekerfer's Entrepreneurial Academy is that every student who attends the school is required to start a small business that generates revenue. They're also required to publish a minimum of one book per year. And we're growing rapidly, and it's a really exciting time period. So this is our fifth year, and we're really excited. Outside of that, I'm also a business coach, speaker, author, and that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay. And I know like the first time I met you was you were speaking and you were speaking on some of your stories and situations that you've come through because you haven't always been this author, entrepreneur, speaker. So tell the audience a little bit about your backstory and some of the messes or one of the messes that you have come through.
Absolutely. So, 10 years ago now. So this is what you're seeing now is the 10-year product of the struggle and overcoming a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties. But I remember, and I recall from when I wrote my first book, I talked about the fact that I counted up all the jobs I was fired from the time about I was married up until this, well, I'm still married, but from the time I got married up to a certain time point, and I realized I had been fired from about 25 jobs. So it's a challenge when you're married because the wife don't want to hear that, right? She do not want to hear that. So I finally ended up getting a job that I liked. Part of the problem was I didn't really work jobs that I liked. So I worked, Walmart stocking shelves or telemarketing or, some factory job, and those didn't last too long. And so I finally got a job that I liked. I was in my zone. I felt like everything had been practicing in life, all my beliefs, everything was wrapped up and I was free to be myself. Um, I actually was a police officer under this black police chief named Chief Grady, and I had never seen policing look like this before. Uh, it's just, I've never seen it where people were in love with the police. And the system he set up was completely unlike anything I've ever seen anywhere else in the country before or after. And so what he had set up in his department was really compatible with my personal beliefs. And so I loved being there. Well, long story short, uh, the police chief brought about a lot of change. He lowered racism, not racism, he lowered racial discrimination. He set up all these systems, and they ended up getting him out of that position, illegally, because a national thing happened and he ended up winning a lawsuit or whatever, but they didn't want him in that position. Well, when they came for him, they also came for all his supporters. And I was a loyal supporter because he was the one person I felt like gave me a shot in life when nobody else was giving me like a fair shot to really be great. And so I was like, hey, if y'all fire him and you come for him, you're gonna have to come for me too. Well, they came for me too. So at this point now, no college degree, and I'm working this job making $50,000, $60,000 a year. And at that time, I thought like this was the pinnacle of what I could actually do in life because I never had a job making that much money before. So I was like, yo, this is everything. So when I lost that job, it was kind of depressing. Not that the other jobs I lost, with those other jobs I didn't care about, but this job I really liked because of him. And when I lost that job, I was like, wow, where am I going to get another job making $60,000? Because as you go higher up in your jobs, your lifestyle adjusts. So
Mhm.
it was very hard for my lifestyle to adjust, going from $60,000 to anything. And so from that moment, my wife also at the time she was working as well, and she didn't like what happened to me, so she didn't want to be there anymore either. And so my wife, she was like, listen, I'm leaving and we got to figure it out. So now we both don't have no job. We have a new house. I'm trying to think if my baby was on the way yet. I'm not sure. I don't know if baby might have came maybe 6 months later, something like that. But we're in this situation where we have all these responsibilities, and I just didn't have the money to live the lifestyle I wanted. So we went from 6 figures a year combined to, Link and Live Heap and just going through all the struggles of just not being financially stable. So lights being cut off, water being cut off, gas being cut off, to the point where when my daughter was born and she came home, the radiator had broken. I didn't have the money to get it fixed in the basement. And we had, I think, 2 or 3 space heaters running the house. And I should note, my daughter was born December 25th in Illinois. So if you know anything about winter in Illinois, it ain't no joke. It's
Wow.
freezing out here, right? Definitely going through this difficult time period. Cars being repossessed. Just a very difficult time period. And at that time period, it got to a certain point where we were so poor that my wife and I used to have to go like to the YMCA, and we'd have to sneak in to the Y right before they closed just to take showers because we didn't have any running water at home. So we weren't homeless, but we might as well have been. We just had a fancier box than the other homeless people, right? So that was the separator. Very difficult time in life. I didn't know what I wanted to be in life, and I was trying to figure it out. And honestly, a lot of what I wanted to do in life just didn't exist yet. It just the things that thought I would be good at, it just didn't exist for me. And so that time period was extremely difficult, going through cars being repossessed, trying to get bills paid, having to go down to the welfare office and get food stamps and get my, lights get cut off. We got to go down to the light heap office to get your lights cut back on. Just very difficult. And then even after that, getting another job and realizing this job don't even pay, this job don't even pay 1/6 of what the last job paid. It's very humbling, very difficult time period in our life, but I'm also extremely grateful for it. Extremely grateful.
Well, I want to go back because you unpacked a lot right there, with a lot of things that were going on. You were married. You say you were fired from about 25 jobs? Or
Yes.
you okay.
No, I can count the 25 jobs.
Okay. And then the situation with the police office. Okay. How did all of that affect you mentally? Like, I can't even imagine, as a young African American man in America, mentally going through that. How was that affected?
Well, mentally, it was tough. One thing that I can say to my credit of just working through it is I had a very strong support system. All right, very strong support system and some good mentors. And the thing was, I had great spiritual mentors, right? I didn't realize at that time period, spiritually, I was very strong. Economically, I was very weak. And that's a bad balance to have where you can have all the knowledge and spiritual information that you want, but if you don't have the economics to balance it out, put yourself in a tough situation. So spiritually, I was very weak. At the same time, all this was happening, and this will give you some context. I was one of the top, I don't want to say activists. I'm not an activist, but I was volunteering in my community, doing community work. I adopted a neighborhood. I was helping people. Even in my struggle, I was known as being the person who helped everybody to get better. Right. So I couldn't help myself, but I was in all of the projects. I was in the worst neighborhoods. I had relationships with the police. I had relationships with the D boys. I had relationships with the young people. I had relationships with the older people. I was a resource in the community. And while this was happening, part of the sanity was being able to help other people. I didn't know how. I didn't fully know, the law of attraction or anything like that, but I understood that if I continue to give out, eventually, at some point in time, someday, some good got to come back my way, right? And give you case in point. During this time period, when we bought the house, I knew I was never taught entrepreneurship because it wasn't taught in school. I didn't go to college. I didn't really know much about business, but I always had a business mindset. So one of the things I tried was there was a company Larry Johnson was involved with, and a lot of my spiritual background was involved with called Everlasting Water. So I told my wife, like, hey, listen, everybody drinks water. Let's invest in this business. So we probably bought a few $1,000s worth of 5-gallon jugs of water. And the first day when our shipment arrived, it was great. We sold water at everybody, like we made money, like it was great. But because I didn't know business, I didn't calculate that day two, I need new customers. Like my warm market is sold. And they have, if people just bought 4 or 5 gallons of water, they're not coming back to re-up no time soon. And it never dawned on me, like, how am I going to move this water? I just moved to this city. I don't know anybody out here. Like, I don't have a business model. I don't have a business structure. I don't understand business. And so I attempted, it was a fail, but it taught a lot of lessons in that also. But going through this time period of being fired and having jobs that I like and all that, having a strong support system was major. I remember waking up at 5 in the morning, going across the street to my minister's house. I lived at 1318, he lived at 1317 on the same street. So I literally bought my house so that we could live on the same block on the same street. And I remember going over at 5 a.m. and we'd do some training, he'd do some mental exercises. He would help me with some things as far as job wise. I would listen to some Tony Robbins, and I was trying to figure this thing out. And other people's belief in me kept me strong mentally when, for the most part, I should have been breaking down, right? So that, and then also, you know, um, my support system was there, but also I knew coming home, like, I gotta figure out a way to be a man for my wife. Like, I gotta figure it out. Then we had our child. I'm like, I gotta figure out a way to be a father for my daughter and a man for my wife that's not making excuses, that's responsible, that's accountable, that's figuring things out. I gotta figure this thing out. So that's always kept me driven alongside my support system. So in my support system, I keep talking about, so I'm in the Nation of Islam. So I had brothers who, but my father wasn't, my father was, I think my parents got divorced when I was 6. So I know my father, we have a relationship. I'm not saying he's bad or anything like that, but I just didn't have him in my life growing up to teach me the fatherly lessons. And so being around other men who are successful let me know that, you know what, I can be something. I just got to figure out what I need to be.
Right, that's true. Figuring out what you need to be. And with that, like you say, you were mentally strong. And what about on the emotion side? Because what you just said, and it kind of ties in what you just said about having to be that man and that husband and that father. So especially like when your child came, how were you emotionally when it came to like the work and the aspects of, you said, being accountable and things like that?
You know what? So emotionally, it's gonna sound bad. So emotionally, part of, just in my opinion, part of what made me, because when I was a youth, I got in a lot of trouble. And I think I got suspended in school every year from kindergarten to sophomore year of high school. In my junior year of high school, I got expelled, but they had to bring me back because they didn't turn the paperwork in time. So I'm not saying I was the best behaved child. And so, but the parts of society that were designed to break Black men, I think, is what helped carry me emotionally. Because like when I first got married, I had to learn certain emotions because they just weren't there because of how I grew up and the things that I saw and the people I was around and the stuff that we were into. When I first got married and I got into like my first real fight with my wife, she told me, she said, listen, I'm your wife, not your enemy. Like, you're treating me like you got beef in the street. Like, I'm talking cold shoulder, no conversation, don't talk to me. You can go in that room, don't even talk to me. We live in 2 separate lives in the same house. And so emotionally, I had to learn emotion all over because outside of like, my direct family, my mother, my brothers, people that I love, I wasn't that emotional of a person. So um, I had to learn emotion. And it's been, that's been a steady, progressive thing growing up. And so even to this day. But part of that protected me because emotionally, I should have been a wreck. Emotionally, I should have been, I should have, at some point, there should have been a breakdown. But because I was going through this thing, learning emotion, I didn't really feel like I had time to really feel my emotions. Me and my wife do marriage counseling, and we learn. I learn a lot in marriage counseling, and I didn't really have time to process what was happening to me. It was like, put that to the side and keep going, and you got to figure it out. Now that I'm a little bit older and I can look back, I'm like, that's crazy. Like, this is, you should have felt this way at this time, but just the block, like it was just like a blockade of emotions. And so it's definitely not healthy to, block those type of emotions, but it helped me get through a time period when everything around me seemed like it was falling and I wasn't sure how to get up. I just didn't have time to really tap into those emotions. I would get, I was angry to a certain degree when I lost the job I actually liked, but there was nothing I could do about it. It was depressing. Like, I knew I had those emotions, but I didn't really tap into those emotions because it was like, you got to put that to the side and try to figure it out. And so, I mean, emotions were there, but it wasn't until years later when I actually was able to process and start dealing with, like, oh man, you know what? This is not normal. People are not supposed to live life this way. It's not supposed to be this way. I think emotionally, one of the things that changed my life, I think, was the first time I left the country. And I think I went to Mexico the first. I went to Riviera Maya, and it was so different. Like, you could see the stars clear at night. You could see the ocean coming in with the Gulf of Mexico. There were no police sirens at night. I went to, we stayed at an all-inclusive. I went to like the breakfast bar and asked for like oatmeal. And I remember the chef being like, okay, we'll make it for you. And I was like, just give me the pack. I'll warm it up in the microwave. And he's like, oatmeal's not instant. And I'm like, huh? Right? Like, these small things play major parts. You start realizing oatmeal is not instant. But when you grow up in poverty, when you grow up that way, I didn't even realize it. Then I remember another experience at that same time. I had like an apple or orange or some piece of fruit. And I was like, why does this taste so funny? And they was like, oh, you probably never had real fruit before. Like, the fruit in America is gassed with ethanol, and they rush it to the market. So most of the time, we're not even eating real fresh fruit. We're eating something that looks like fruit, but it's not real fruit. And so emotionally, I started realizing there's an entire world out there that I know nothing about. And it made me reflect, and it made me emotional because I'm like, there's a whole world. Another thing happened on that same vacation. They had signs up that said, please feed the animals. And the raccoons down there are not like the raccoons here. The raccoons are smart. They would come up to the table and ask. We had a thing at night where we heard a knock on the door, and you open the door, the raccoons are outside the door. You give them some food, and they all go scatter away. But they're like friendly raccoons. And that experience in and of itself, it may not be a lot of people, but to me, I was like, wait a second, there's a world out here and a life that I'm missing and I'm not living. And because of how I came up, that emotion, it made me feel some sort of way. Like, it put in me a drive and a desire to be greater, to be more, and to really touch the emotion, let my emotions touch me in a way that drove me to want to find something better. So
That's so true. Like, once you are actually exposed to things that you normally aren't exposed to, it does change. It changes your way of thinking. It changes your way of, like, just looking at life in general. And when people aren't exposed, and when people just stay in their one way of living and they never see other places, like I tell my students that all the time, I want to get you out of the east side of Houston and take you just to the west side so you can see that it's different. Like, people actually live better. And that is so true. And what you said also about, like, you didn't have time really to be emotional. And I know I've heard a lot of men say this. A lot of times women are more emotional. But you're like, I have time to really tap into those emotions. I gotta grind. I gotta get out here and get it. I ain't got time to be depressed and sad. But and with all of that, like, I'm hearing you, and socially, it sounds like to me, it sounds like you are involved and you have a social life and you're doing things in the community. Like, did your social life get affected at all by the lack of the income and the lack of the economics?
you know what? Socially, I think volunteering and like adopting neighborhoods and all, like, you could always find me. If I wasn't home because I didn't have a job, I had plenty of time to volunteer. And jobs didn't really fulfill me, but helping people really fulfilled me. it really made me feel like that's when I would tap into the emotion is helping people. And I'm like, man, you know what? There's something about helping people and loving my people and being here and having something to offer that really made me feel inside like some type of fulfillment that I wasn't getting at the job and I didn't have a path in life really outside of what I was doing. So it was like that for me, it was like that was the thing. I'm gonna tell you what happened socially. So two things. Number one, socially, nobody that I was helping knew the type of struggle I was going through, right? Like at a certain point, I got my Mercedes Benz. I'm wearing a suit every day. You know, I got my briefcase, so I actually look successful, and that's just it. I look successful. But outside of that, if we're talking about how could you be successful if your home life is in shambles, and my wife, you know, kudos to her because you know she stood down through all of it, and you know she, you know, was always the rock for me. But looking back, I'm like, man, how you put up with this? That's crazy. This is, I don't know if I could go through there and put up with that. That's standard is crazy. But socially, people just didn't know, right? Because I looked a certain part, I was involved. You always saw me, you know, I'd be interviewed. You might see me in a newspaper, magazine, or whatever. So people saw one thing, but the reality that we were facing was completely different. So there was that. And then socially, I don't remember who said it to me, but I was having a conversation and with all the volunteer work I did, I mean, I went door to door in the projects. I knew neighborhoods where I knew everybody face to face. I knew people's problems. I knew people's children. I developed programs within the community to help young people out. I've always been able to develop programs to help young people out. I had developed a program in the projects that got so popular that I would arrive sometimes and there would be lines of children wrapped around the block to come to the program. So I've always had that ability to tap into that. If somebody says something to me that really put everything in perspective socially. They said, um, when you volunteer and you give the way you give, like, that's great. But if you don't have the money, like you can't help the poor if you're one of them. And if you don't have money to actually help change people's reality, you have time and time is good, but time absent of money doesn't give you the results that people actually need to really change their life. And I said, what do you mean? So they said, think about you and Will Smith. They said, you go to Flint, Michigan, you want to help people with the water crisis in Flint. You can go door to door, you can talk to them, you can pass out pamphlets about lead in the water, you can educate them, you can do all these things. Will Smith doesn't even have to come to Flint. He just puts up $1 million, has 50 Mack trucks filled up with fresh water arrive at Flint, and he's going to be more impactful with his money than you are with your time, absent of money, because the money allows him to actually tap into what people need. And I was like, dang. When I looked at that, I was like, all right, that means I got to figure out how to get some money. Like that. That means now I'm seeing the fuller picture. And it was one of those things that circumstances had to unravel for me to be able to see. Because at that time I was so narrow-minded and focused on like, you know what, I'm going to help people in this way I know how to help people. And that had to unfold for me to see like, you know what, can't help the poor if I'm one of them. Like I can't be as impactful as I want to be because I don't have access to the resources to help people that with the resources they need. Okay, I'm very limited in what I can do. You know, I can give my time all day long, but and even though time may be more valuable personally to people than money, money has a greater value because the money can be there to work while you're not able to work. The money can get things and put things in position. And so I had to learn about money. I didn't know anything about money as far as financial literacy or just not even financial literacy. Just I didn't have a clue how important it was to have money to go along with the impact. But once you have money and impact, now you can make some major moves and you can affect lives. So socially, those two dynamics were playing that, it was bringing me fulfillment, but also I realized that at a point when this was all happening, I realized like, man, you know what? I got to figure this thing out. And it's interesting you asked that question because while volunteering and while being in the community, I think I might have been on security for my minister at an event. I met this brother, and the brother was like, hey, I make products at my office. And I was like, what kind of products you make? And he's told me, he's like, come down to the office, I'll give you some free products, and I'll show you what I do. And from volunteering and being in the community, and this is the law of attraction now, right? I met this person who started me on my journey to entrepreneurship. He brought me to his office. He showed me what he did. I was so impressed. I was like, let me bring my wife. The next time I came and got my wife, we both went. And from there, we saw what he was doing. We was like, we could create our own product. We started our product line right there on the spot. And that was the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey that completely changed our life. So um, here we are like 5 or 6 years later, and completely different from that time. Maybe no, it's longer than that, but completely maybe 7 or 8 years later now. But that time period of meeting him came about while volunteering, while helping other people. So I knew that it was going to come. I knew one day I would get paid back for doing good. I just didn't know in which form it would come in. So
Wow, that's good. That's what I was just about to go there and ask you, as far as like you were saying, the law of attraction, how you were giving back and how you were socially involved and working with the programs. I want to ask this question. So how long were you, because I was going to ask next about your status of life, but how long were you all in that particular situation where your status of life was living in that living in that way before you met this brother that helped you on your entrepreneurial path? And then we'll go and talk about that because it kind of all stems together. But I'm just wondering, how long did like you were saying, she was putting up with, she was with you, y'all were riding together through all of this. You about 3 years, 2, 3 years, or
about,
less than that?
probably about probably about 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that. And it actually it's not as long as it seemed. The days were just longer because we didn't have nothing, right? It wasn't as long as it seemed. So it actually, when I lost the job, it didn't really, the spiral down began. But you lost a job. I got unemployment. I was fired. I was illegally fired, so I got like unemployment. I went in unemployment office, whatever. So still had unemployment checks coming in for a few $1,000s. So we were still comfortable, but I could already see it. And my wife used to say stuff like, "You need to start preparing now because that money gonna run out. When that money runs out, what we gonna do? When that money gone, what's next? When that money's not there." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm still making more money on unemployment than I was making working any job." So I'm like, I'm focused and I'm still volunteering, helping people, doing the same stuff I was doing before. And the actual that spiral began. But when my money ran out, when the money ran out from that time period, it wasn't even as long. That 6 months may be part of that 2 year time period. So you had 6 months, and then we still had other, like, I cashed out my 401k. She cashed out hers. So when it really got bad and was like, we ain't got no power, none of that might have lasted for maybe a year and a half, And while it was happening, and here's the thing, meeting that brother, it's not like I met him, we learned about the products, and then life changed and got better. But the one thing actually that in this time period, in the time flow, was happened, my wife put me onto something that I fell in love with as far as work. Because I had always, I told you I got fired from 25 jobs. McDonald's wasn't, I never worked fast food, but like Walmart wasn't it, Lowe's wasn't it, telemarketing wasn't it, like security, none of that stuff was really working out for me. So but my wife was like, "Hey, listen, you're an athlete. I'm an athlete." My wife was like a D1 All-American college basketball player, full ride scholarship, all that. So probably more athletic, but she like, "You athlete, I'm an athlete." She got introduced to something. She's like, "Hey, maybe we can get paid to referee sports games." And I was like, maybe, I don't know. But what I found out was, as a referee, I could set my own schedule. I could negotiate contracts. I could work when I wanted to work. I had free time when I wanted it. And so once I got into it, so I was like, okay, we started off refereeing basketball. Then we went from basketball, baseball, softball. Then we did football. We did volleyball. So literally, I began refereeing year round. And so part of that 2 year slope was the coming back up, because the comeback up was, I was like, wait a second, this feels different. Like emotionally and socially, mentally, it feels different. I'm making my own schedule, working when I want to work. At one point, I wanted to take my wife on vacation. It was like June, so maybe by year two, I refereed baseball games almost every day in June. I did tournaments. I did all kind of stuff. I probably made somewhere between around $8,000 that June refereeing. And I'm like, "Hey, we going on vacation." And the feeling I got of being my own boss, it's not like I had a boss to report to. You, everything. You have organizations and stuff that you get assigned games through, but other than that, I set my schedule. I move how I want to move. I'm in the places I want. I never had to miss my daughter's stuff at school. I could be there for my family, and I could work when I wanted to work. It was difficult. It was tough, you know. You got to do baseball games and it's hot and it's 100 degrees, or you're doing baseball games and it's freezing outside. The game should be canceled, but you're still doing it. Or we did days where we did like 12 basketball games back to back to back, and your legs are dead, and you're doing tournaments over the weekend. Like, it was tough, but the feeling of being my own boss was greater than that time period. So maybe over 2.5 years, maybe like 2013, 2014 to about 2016, and then on the come up back up, because the product that the crazy part is, the guy that I'm telling you about that introduced us to making our own product, he ended up burning us, right? Which is I didn't put that in my mess story. It's a whole other story, but that was my first time feeling betrayal and being backstabbed by somebody that I thought had my best intentions at heart. But it was part of the entrepreneurial journey I needed to learn to grow. So by the time it happened to me on the stage where I'm at now, I'm like, that's small change and we keep it pushing, because it already happened before. But that time period when I got that product and we started refereeing during that time period was the other swing, on that 2.5 year time period, when I start to see the light again. Like, oh, it's not all darkness, it's not all bad, it's not all doom and gloom. There's a way if you want to dig in. So.
And I'm not gonna go into that story and that mess, but that's crazy that was like you got burned by that guy that was actually the one who kind of opened your eyes to see the entrepreneurial aspect. So after all of this, and like you said, y'all started to have your come up. What did y'all do and how did you get out of it? You gave an overall of like all the little things that you did, but like what really was it that got you to from there to kind of where you are now?
Consistency. So one thing we knew is, me and my wife, we knew that we had to find a way, right? And we knew it didn't matter who burnt us, because we got the guy who helped us. He burnt us. Actually, we actually secured a deal with 8 Walmarts, and he burnt us at the deal table. So we was like heated, like, oh, in my mind, I was like, this is it. We're gonna be in Walmart. We're going regional. We're about to go national. We're gonna have this product. We about to be. That didn't happen. So I'm like, okay. Found another guy who said he's going to be an investor, but we found out he really didn't have money. He couldn't really be an investor. He was friend. So that happened. We got to a certain point, me and my wife, where we're like, you know what? The problem is we keep depending on other people to do for us what we can do for ourselves. We're just going to do everything ourselves and not depend on other people. And the moment we took that attitude, we got an investor a family member. We got an angel investor well, I shouldn't say angel investor, somewhat of an angel investor, a silent partner. And we were able to take our product from just having a product line to now being a full-fledged beauty supply store. And from having a beauty supply store, 6 months after we started the beauty supply store, we started the school. And then of course the school, this is year 5. So that takes you right up into the modern day with the school. And the thing is, the beauty supply store at a certain spot, at a certain point, we were like, we don't want to do this anymore, because we weren't passionate about it. It was just the way forward to figure it out. And so, but we want the school. We like the school is the thing that's going to allow us to impact lives, that's going to allow us to feel free, that's going to allow us to feel fulfilled. The school is the thing for us that's going to take us to the next level. The school is how we'll make 7 figures. The school is how we'll make 8 figures. The school is how we'll make 9 figures. The school is everything. And so, all of these different things that happen, each one was just built on top of each other. So I'm bringing this full circle to right now. So now our students that are in our school, we're teaching them manufacturing, and we're teaching them distribution and marketing through the products that we started with. So the same products that brought us into the game have now come full circle. And it's what we give all of our children as their base for entrepreneurship, to go out and learn entrepreneurship on another level. So it's full circle. It's just full circle. Yeah, I mean, it feels wonderful.
I bet, especially like as you're talking and like thinking back on like what you went through and what you came through and like how you all maneuvered to get out. And like you said, consistency. It sounds like you were just consistent at I'm going to get out of this. We're going to get through this and just keep grinding. Like, what is it now if someone was interested in supporting you or helping you continue on this journey that you're on. Is there anything that you'd like to leave with the audience as they're listening?
Absolutely. So very interesting thing because I'm the first one of my friends with this. Uh, there's actually a company of Chicago filmmakers or some filmmakers in Chicago that are shooting a documentary on our school. And so I would tell everybody definitely check this documentary out when it comes out because this documentary is going to be amazing. And I just never in my life dreamed that I could build something that people would actually want to have a documentary about the actual process and what's happening. So check that documentary out. I'm gonna break this on your podcast. We haven't told anybody this publicly, but I think this is a great place to start. So June 7th, 8th, and 9th of this year, we figured out how to really give back to the community. So we're gonna have, I should say, every year at the end of every school year around graduation, when our high school and middle school students graduate, we have a gala. And the gala is like an awards banquet. It's a ceremony, they come dance, have fun, food, all that. So it's gotten bigger every year. At the end of last year, we had Marquell Russell. Well, the first year we had Antonio T. Smith Jr. come out. He spoke. He's our keynote. Last year we had Marquell Russell come out and speak. This year we're like, all right, how can we make it bigger? We packed the house last year. The venue was correct. Like it was everything you would want happened. So we're like, all right, it keeps growing. So this year, we turned the gala into actually a 3-day conference. And so it's going to be a 3-day conference for children 21 and under, and then adults 21 and over. In this conference, we're going to do what's never been done in the country before. So every child who comes to this conference in line with our school, the same way every child who comes to our school has to start a small business, every child who comes to this conference will leave with a business in hand, right? On top of that, I called out all of my top tier, high level, successful, multi-millionaire friends who have something in some way, like they either got to be speakers, they got to give. I'm working right now to secure somebody we work with named Elliot Eddy. He has the top educational STEM program in the country. I want to say 2 or 3 years in a row. He's been in like Black Enterprise. He's been in Forbes. He's all over the place and everything. He has this thing called the Entrepreneur Game, and he allowed my school to help him beta test it. So we're going to bring that for all the young people and allow them to have an entrepreneur game tournament alongside everybody getting their business, alongside the TikTok challenge. This thing is about to be phenomenal. Never been done before. I got Antonio T. Smith Jr. already locked in. We have Marquell Russell, of course, because we're opening a school in Atlanta. And then we have just a gang of people that are all like there's people that have chipped in at some point, some type of way. So this thing is going to be the first of its kind in the country. We want to take it to Atlanta and Houston. It's going to be phenomenal, and then we'll cap it off with the gala. We got some big name people coming out to that. So this is like the thing that if people want to be involved, this is where you want to be involved at. So anybody who wants to be involved, we have a program called Adopt a Student. They can adopt a student. An adopted student means they can get a partial scholarship, they can get a full scholarship. We ask people to become monthly donors. They donate monthly, and of course, there's all type of incentives. If you become a monthly donor, you can adopt a student, but you can help students. You can follow their business, follow their trajectory, follow their grades, follow their books, follow all the things that they're doing. So there's a lot people can get involved with right now, and they just gotta tap in. They just gotta tap in. There's a lot they can get involved with right now.
That just sounds so amazing. As an educator, I'm like, man, first of all, I just want to congratulate you on the school and the academy and everything that you're doing with those students. The fact of them having to have a book, have to have a business, and then just them going at their own pace. Like, I remember meeting some of the students at one of the events here in Houston, and they were saying how they're in higher grades than what they would have been. And I just think that the entire concept is phenomenal. And the event for June, oh my gosh, I'm excited. Hopefully, I'm waiting for you to bring one to Houston still, okay, but I will go to Atlanta too, okay, so I do travel. But as we wrap up, first, let me thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story with the audience. And as we close, are there any last words of encouragement or advice that you would leave with someone who may be going through some of the same situations that you've gone through?
Absolutely. So I'll say two things. Two things. So number one, the first is for my married couples, right? Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich, said that the strongest mastermind alliance that can exist is between husband and wife. Napoleon Hill said the husband wife mastermind together, the two of you can accomplish in 1 year more than you would be able to accomplish if you were alone in 7 years. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, this makes sense, right? Especially if you're talking about just the basics of making $1 million a year. Well, typically it takes between 3 to 5 years to become a millionaire in your business within the fifth year, typically is what it takes. But well, I'm sorry, let me correct that. Not within your fifth year, within your 21st year, right? So if you can cut down 21 years into 3 years, that's a great blueprint. But you may say, well, I'm not married. What about me? Whatever. Then I would also remind people that the solution to all business problems that, especially in the African American community, that we don't necessarily practice is that every other community practices is called mergers and acquisitions. Or for us, because we don't necessarily have the finances, it's called strategic partnerships. And my success can be attributed not because I know something, not because I'm great, not because I'm the smartest person in the room. None of those things are true. My success is attributed to strategic partnerships, partnering with people and giving ownership. I would rather be a 30% owner of $1 million than 100% owner of nothing, right? And the moment we begin to think like that and we start to realize that we need to form strategic partnerships in our community, and that's how you grow businesses. The book that I'm writing right now, that's what I'm studying. But literally, if we as a community can put our egos to the side and put our self-hatred to the side and put these negative aspects we feel about ourselves and our people to the side and realize we're stronger together than we are apart, then we can start making successful people, businesses, companies all over the place. So that's my advice is whatever business you in, find 5 or 6 other like-minded people just like yourself, pull your resources together and grow together. It'll be a much easier journey and a much more successful and a much more lucrative journey than trying to do it by yourself.
Facts, 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 all facts. And if people did work, I like the way you said strategic partnerships because that is how you grow. No one grows as exponentially on their own as when they partner with people strategically. And as we wrap up this episode, thank you again, Brother Henry, for your time, for your message. And I always like to leave with this quote. And I was just saying on another interview, I'm like, I need to find out who wrote this quote because I always use it at the end of my episodes. I need to give credit to where credit is due. But I always like to tell everyone, if you want to be sad, keep thinking about the past. But
Mm.
if you want to be anxious or worried, keep thinking about the future. But if you want to be happy, focus on the present day and be grateful for the things that you have.
Mm.
Again, this is Tracy D. Armstrong with What's Your Mess?